This is Justin.
And this is Haley. You're listening to The Price of Avocado Toast.
We're a married millennial couple wanting to normalize the conversations around money. We want to hear about your highs and your lows,
The do's and the don'ts on your path towards financial freedom. Hi Toasties, welcome to The Price of Avocado Toast, episode 2.
Whether you're a first-time listener or you've been following us from the start of this thing, we are so glad that you're here to have this conversation today. Honey, this has been a super fun week after the drop of episode 1.
So fun. I am so thankful for everyone and all of the feedback that we've been getting. Justin, can you go over some of the feedback we've gotten?
Yeah, definitely. We got a couple different cues. So I think the big one was, I like to say for sure and excited and definitely. So I'm going to try and work on those phrases.
But aren't you for sure definitely excited?
Oh, I'm definitely for sure excited about the podcast. Yeah. I mean, that was a big one. And then the other was that the audio sounds a bit spacious. And we talked with a couple of different people. Some people were like, hey, maybe move to a different room of the house. Justin, adjust the gain. Haley, get closer to the mic. But one of the really cool notes that we got was people thought that it was authentic and they felt like they were just sitting at a table talking with friends. And that to me was our ultimate goal with the podcast. So you guys, we decided we're just going to stay at the table. If you want to come and renovate our house and build us a beautiful podcast office, you're more than welcome to. But until then, you're hanging out with us at our dining room table. And it just is what it is.
I wouldn't want to sit anywhere else. So this is comfortable for me.
Agreed.
I really wanted to say thank you to everybody who has subscribed to our podcast, who has left ratings and awesome reviews on iTunes and other platforms, and for sharing on social media. That's the only way we can get the word out is by you guys, and we really, really appreciate it. We've also been getting some messages from some of our followers on Instagram, and at My Debt Free Dreams actually gave me some interesting information about avocado toast. She said that avocado toast, she lived in Chile for a long time, and avocado toast is like something they've been eating for centuries. And I just kind of thought avocado toast was just this bougie thing that millennials ate. So I thought that was a fun fact that I wanted to share with you guys. So today I did a webinar for Financial Coach Master Training. I think that eventually I want to end up doing financial coaching alongside teaching, but I'm not totally sure what that looks like. So today I was doing a webinar just to kind of get some more information. And if I'm being really honest here, I was trying to see if Dave Ramsey would toss me a free financial coach master training program because they were giving a free one out to one of the people attending.
Ain't no shame in it. I love it.
Well, I mean, I don't want to just toss the cash towards it, so I just figured I'd show up and see what happened.
There you go.
But I did not win. Maybe next time. I'll keep going to the info meetings and just see what happens.
Keep sitting through the same question 100 times.
Oh, yeah. I keep asking the same questions, and they're probably going to be like, who's this girl? She keeps coming. She has the same name. I think it's the same person. But anyway, they shared a fact that I thought was really interesting. 40% of people pre-2020, before COVID-19 even was a thing, although the 19 tells me it was 2019, but that's a whole nother story. So before 2020, 40% of people could not cover a $400 emergency with cash. Meaning, if something happened that was an emergency, it was automatically put on a credit card or a personal loan. So that really kind of ties into the topic that we want to talk about today, which is preparing for the unexpected, because you never really know what's going to happen. Life happens, life knocks you on your butt, and we have to get ready.
Absolutely. And we're not here to shame anybody that's lived like that because we lived like that. We put emergencies on credit cards. We didn't have any type of residual cash to handle emergencies. And even now, our emergency fund is just $1,000. If it's a big, big emergency, we'd have to sit down with our financial coach and really talk about what we needed to do to work through it. So we're in the same boat. We were absolutely in that same boat just a few short months ago. And I think it's really important, honey, for you to share the story of what's got us to here today.
We've had a few things that have gotten us here, but I'm just going to kind of talk about what really got this podcast going. we are, yes, millennials drowning in student loan debt, but that's not the reason why we started this podcast. We started this podcast for a very specific reason. And last time you listened, you heard our background, our financial background, but there's much more to it than that. So I kind of wanted to go into that story. So Justin and I met in late 2015, and at that time, I just graduated college in 2015, and I got my bachelor's degree in dance. People might laugh at that, but at the time, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I was taught you had to go to college, you had to do certain things, and I'm just not so academic. So I decided to do dance, and I had been dancing for years, and that's just where I ended up. Rolling around on the floor, it was my jam. So I went and got my bachelor's in dance. But then, of course, as predicted, I didn't get a dance job. I didn't really want a dance job, but I was fresh out of graduation, just kind of clueless. And if you just graduated college, I'm sorry, that first year out of college, it kind of sucks. It's just a bunch of cluelessness, and there's really nowhere to go. So you will get through it. It just lasts like a year or so. So when Justin and I met, I was managing a gym. I was pretty high up the management ladder, actually, pretty much taking care of the gym alongside one other person. But I lost my job, completely blindsided me. Little did I know at the time, the company was really struggling financially, and they actually ended up closing, I think like 6 months after I got laid off. But that layoff hurt so bad. It cut so deep. It was worse than any other pain I'd ever felt, because when I work, I give my all to my job. And this was all that I was at this time. I didn't really have a direction, and I mean, you remember when that happened? I was just like so devastated.
And I had just met you, and I could already see how committed you were to this place, and you would share with me the tasks that you do around there, and I'd come in and, visit you at work and grab you for lunch or something, and it was just obvious that you loved that place, and you loved the community. You felt proud of your work there. And I remember that was a hard few weeks when we found out, hey, you're no longer going to be employed here. And again, it was a financial decision, and they at least were upfront about that. And unfortunately, they folded, 6 months later. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't make it any less difficult for you to go through at the time.
Yeah, anyone who's lost their job knows that feeling, and it really sucks. So if you're going through that right now with coronavirus and furloughs and layoffs, my heart goes out to you. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know that pain deep through and through. It sucks.
We are on their side.
Yeah, it gets better, but the pain is so real. And sometimes people you don't know until you get laid off or fired from a job that you were so passionate about having. And the feeling, it hurts, but I promise you will get through this. But at that time, Justin, we went to this play with his family and his grandma, and if you don't know, which you probably wouldn't know because we're just a couple weeks into this, but so I have my bachelor's degree in dance and theater, and how did we meet?
Well, we met on the internet, and I messaged Haley on the dating app like, hey, I see that you like musical theater. I like musical theater too, which is probably not the greatest opener in the world. But, at least it sealed the deal once you finally decided to meet me out for drinks. But yeah, we went and saw a 2-person stage musical about Mahalia Jackson. And it was so cool. And I remember how jacked up you were in the car ride on the way home.
We're in the car. First off, I didn't even know who Mahalia Jackson was. She was this person that was friends with Martin Luther King Jr. that went alongside him along the entire civil rights movement. And I'm watching this play just like dumbfounded that at this time I had my bachelor's degree. I had gone through years of education and never had I ever heard this person's name. And I was furious from my core. I was so angry that no one ever taught me this. And so I just felt just like this burning fire inside of me, like, well, if no one taught me this, then I'll go become a teacher. I'll go teach people these things.
And it's even more interesting because you were a dance major, and obviously in dance you're gonna have some like theater classes and stuff like that. And Mahalia Jackson literally was dubbed like the Queen of Gospel, which we didn't go to, a religious school, but still like the Queen of Gospel, and we didn't hear about this, amazing talent and amazing voice back in the day. Like that's another story about how history books are just not doing our students justice.
We have a lot to say about that.
Yeah.
But I just remember being so fired up, like, this is just not cool. Why are people choosing, people as in curriculum companies or teachers or whomever, choosing to teach what they want to teach and omit whatever they just don't feel like teaching? I just was so mad. And I remember being like, sitting in the car, driving home, like, okay, Justin, I'm gonna be a teacher. And he just looks at me like, what do you mean you're gonna be a teacher? Well, I just want to be a teacher. At this time, I had been teaching swimming lessons for like, I don't know, close to 10 years or so. So I had been teaching people how to do things for a long time, teaching swimming. But all of a sudden, I just had this idea to be a teacher, and I went with it. And that's how I became a teacher. Where were you? You were still at Sonoma State at this time.
Mm-hmm.
Tell them what you were studying.
Well, I was still in college studying.
This is a story.
Yeah. I was still at SSU studying criminology. So I was planning on, like, I'm going to go into probation. I was thinking of going into law enforcement. But I was still in school. So it was really kind of up to you to look more into that and see what you wanted to do. I still had, I think, like 5 months left of getting my BA. And again, I wasn't sure what I was going to do afterwards. Shout out to that first year outside of college and trying to decide what you're going to do. But I just remember, you being like, I'm going to be a teacher. And me being like, I don't even know where you effing start.
Well, that's okay. Because I feel like everybody kind of goes through that. They don't really know where to begin. They're just in this very awkward, uncomfortable stage of life. And you really just don't know where to go until you figure it out. But then, I want to be a teacher, but what do I do with that? So I decided to take all the entrance exams, yada, yada, yada. But eventually I got into University of San Francisco for their master's program and teaching credential program. And that was a fantastic experience. Side note, private university, don't do it. Super expensive. But that's kind of where I racked up my student debt. I went and left undergrad with $30,000 and then decided to go to a private university, which cost $50,000. So I'm in the middle of my master's program with $80,000 of student loan debt. In the middle of my program. I don't even have a job yet, and I am entitled to owe the government $80,000 without even really knowing what I just signed up for. We're living off of student loans. We're living off of the grants we were getting, and we didn't really even know any different at that time. So I'm in the middle of my program. What are you doing during this time?
Well, by this point I had graduated from SSU. So I had my bachelor's degree in criminology, and we were living off of the inheritance mentioned in episode 1. So we were subsidizing my job hunt in law enforcement with the money we got from the inheritance. So if you're wondering where some of that money went, it was to subsidize our style of living. But I'm searching for jobs, and I got a local department to sponsor me to go into the police academy. So I'm in the middle of my police academy right when you're in the first summer of your teaching program. So I'm going through and I'm trying to do the best I can with all that stress right as you are moving into first semester student teaching. And then I remember coming home on a Tuesday afternoon, and I told Haley, hey, I'm not going to go back. I had just gotten into the department after graduating from the academy. I did really well there. I was really proud of how I did, and I was a law enforcement officer in the state of California for 10 days and decided that I was not meant to be a police officer. And so I came home on a Tuesday and I told Haley, hey, this isn't for me, and we need to find out what the next thing for us is. And I remember feeling like, oh, shoot, Haley had just planned for this totally different life and what it looks like to be a cop's wife. And I made that decision to come home and be like, hey, I'm changing the game plan and I'm flipping the script, and it's totally different.
Did you mention that we just got engaged?
Oh yeah.
Several days before.
Yeah, I guess I should say that 3 days prior to that, I had proposed to you. So I'm not even telling my girlfriend, hey, things are going to be different. I'm telling my now fiance, who I just promised a great life to, hey, things are going to be totally different.
Totally different is an understatement. I remember, Justin is not impulsive. He thinks everything through very, very thoroughly. And he comes home and says that he's not going to go back to work. And he wasn't being rude at all, but there was no room for negotiation. He had made up his mind. And I'm shocked. I literally had, like he said, planned this whole entire life out. I don't know. I just immediately went into shutdown freak out mode. Okay, you're not going to be a cop. Well, hey, you know how I'm in the middle of a private university master's program? Well, we had this life set up and you were going to help me get through this. You were going to be the income while I was teaching. So you better go get a job really quickly, because I went into panic mode. I grew up in a low-income family household. Push comes to shove, we figure it out. I wasn't concerned about that, but I was really scared because, we were living off of the inheritance and student loans, and that lifestyle we were living, we were not going to be able to continue doing that, and I knew that I just wasn't ready at that time to be done, but, it was over in the blink of an eye, and I was terrified.
Absolutely. But the coolest part about that was I came home and I remember telling you how I felt, and you just jumped right on board with being like, okay, that's cool. This isn't going to be the life for us. Let's find out what it is. And I went to my twin brother, and I both coach football, but I took the season off and I went to his game that Friday night, and they won. And I remembered the feeling, and I came home and I was like, I think I want to stay coaching somehow. And you were like, okay, have you thought about teaching? And it was like, no, I haven't really thought of teaching. And you pushed me to go to an open house orientation for the program that you were in, and you pushed me to get my sub credential, and I started subbing and decided, hey, I'm going to be a teacher too. And I'm also going to go through the private school program that you went through, and I think I'll take on $50,000 worth of student loans after we just paid off my undergrad student loans, because $50,000 of student loans are the cool thing to do.
And we had money at this time. We, as in, we're not married, so I'll revert that and say Justin had money at this time. We had the money to pay for schooling, or you did at least, but we still chose to take out $100,000 of student loan when we could have cash flowed it. That just blows my mind now that I'm educated about finances even just a little bit, that was where our head was at.
And the crazy thing is that the program we went through gives you a tuition reduction if you volunteer your time at a Catholic school, because USF is a Jesuit school. So we literally would go and volunteer and get those paychecks back for tuition reduction and cash those and just, again, subsidize a lifestyle that we had no business living. We could have walked out for even cheaper in student loans, which is the lesser of two evils. But we didn't. We chose to rack up $100,000 of student loan on top of your $30,000 from BA, and we ended with $130,000.
This sounds so ridiculous saying it out loud. So what we're really saying is we took out the full amount of student loans, whatever they offered us, which was $50,000 per person. So we put our time in to go get 40% off of our tuition. So we did that volunteer work, got the tuition discount, and then when they sent us the refund check, we put it in our checking account and spent it instead of putting it on the loans. Now that I just can't even wrap my head around that. Now that we have been woke.
Been woke to the student loan debacle.
Speaking of student loans right now, you got to listen to Anthony O'Neill's podcast if you ever get a chance.
Yeah, Borrowed Future.
Borrowed Future. Oh my gosh. I remember listening to that podcast. My jaw was at the floor. It's just insane. The entire system. Insanity. So then Justin's going through his his master's program, and I get hired. I finish my program. I get hired as my first year teaching, and, fast forward a little bit. In March, I ended up getting laid off from my position. That's normal with new teachers. They kind of lay off new teachers and then they rehire them, kind of whatever. But let me just add, the day I was laid off, my husband got hired for his job because he's approaching the end of his program. So I get laid off the day that he's hired. He comes home like, yay, I got a job. And I'm like, that's great. I got laid off from mine. It was just really sad.
I think it's really important to clarify here that you're still in your first year teaching. So the first year teaching pink slip is kind of the common trend. Teachers get laid off and they wait for attendance and enrollment numbers to spike back up, and schools say, okay, we can offer you your job back. This was the first year layoff that most teachers experience. So yeah, you got your layoff on the same day that I get hired for my position. And so it's this very weird spectrum of like, hey, we're really excited, but we're really unsure of what's going to happen for next year.
This kind of wraps back around to preparing for the unexpected. We're at this situation where I now have 1 year of teaching under my belt, but I don't have a guaranteed job for the next year. So I'm sitting there waiting to get rehired, which I eventually do, and then we move on. Everything was fine. Then Justin and I finally are at a place. If you can't tell, our entire relationship has been several different road maps, changing directions every 5 seconds. Go. We just met, well, you didn't, I did, just met a neighbor that lives 2 doors down like 3 days ago. And they just gave us a bouquet of flowers and a bunch of lemon cucumbers and a cute little note that said, welcome to the neighborhood. I know this is a little late. And I'm like, oh my God, we've lived here for 3 years. But that's our fault because we've just never made time to get to know anybody.
We're constantly on the move.
I mean, we were in school, police academy, more school, jobs, busy. Oh, bam. We get pregnant with our baby. The best blessing to ever happen. That's the end of my first year teaching. And then I go into my second year teaching. Justin continues. He goes to his first year. Yeah.
First year teaching. Yeah.
First year. And then everything's fine and dandy. My belly is just growing and growing and growing because our baby, by the way, our daughter's name is Calliope. And I really wasn't going to say her name on our podcast. I was just going to call her our daughter. And then I re-listened to our podcast from last week. And that just sounded so forced and awkward. So her name's Calliope. I originally didn't want to tell anyone that because it's super unique. And I didn't want anyone to steal her name. But if you do, it's a cool name.
She's a really cool baby. So hopefully it has something to do with the name. So your life can be easy as well.
It really must. So where are we?
So we're first year. I'm first year teaching. You're your second year teaching. Calliope's growing. And in November, you decide to go out on maternity leave because baby is due. Calliope is due the first week of December.
Mm-hmm. And then she's born, and I am pretty sure I was 7 weeks postpartum. I am at home with a 7-week-old baby. And I get knocked on my butt. Yeah,
absolutely. This is 3 months in at this point to our kind of debt Ramsey solution?
Barely.
Yeah, barely. Like, we're barely sorting it out. Again, we started in November, and you get this knock on the door at 7-something in the morning in February. Mm-hmm. And I'm at work, and I remember I'm setting up my classroom for the day, and you FaceTime me. And I don't get service at work, really. So for you to FaceTime, it's like, okay, wait, why is she not just iMessaging me on the Wi-Fi? This is something really important. And I answer the FaceTime, and you say...
Oh my gosh. I can't even, relive this moment without getting, heated and angry. But I called Justin on FaceTime, and I'm kind of laughing. I don't know. At this point, I think it's a joke. But I got a message. I'm on maternity leave at home with a 7-week-old baby battling postpartum. And I get you are kind by saying a knock. It was a pound on the door by someone that my school district, thou shalt not be named, hired to come deliver me some paperwork that told me that they were terminating my contract for next year. So, this is not the first year pink slip. This is not the second year pink slipped. I was fired. And I say that because I feel like I was fired. What they really ended up doing was they eliminated my position right before I hit tenure because they didn't want to pay to keep me on. But to me, it felt like they just freaking stabbed me in the heart and fired me. So I will continue to say that they fired me because that's what it felt like.
And it wraps back around to you talking about your time at PVAC and the fact, PVAC being the gym that you were at, the fact that you're so committed to your work. I lived those first 2 years teaching with you, and I'm a teacher myself, and I tell people, you can teach circles around me. And you're a 4th grade teacher, I'm a 5th grade teacher, so we're very similar in content. I see what you do, and I'm envious. And as your husband, it was hard to think like, wait a minute, this is personal. They're essentially telling my wife that she's not a good teacher by terminating her contract. And I was blown away as a colleague in the education field that somebody could believe that you weren't a good fit for their district. And obviously we've put together the pieces now, doing our own research into the state of the district and the state of the finances to recognize that, hey, they didn't have the money to pay for teachers to become tenured because they weren't going to be able to lock in those contracts. And if you're familiar with the education system, you know that, once you're tenured, it's pretty hard to get rid of teachers. So they terminated your contract for that. But that was jolting. That was really jolting to our family.
Jolting is an understatement. I'm sitting at home just like shaken. I mean, first off, they can't even get the right name or school on the paperwork. So immediately I'm thinking this has to be a joke or they have something wrong. I don't know. This can't be right. There's no way that I got fired from my job. I am not someone who gets fired. Yes, I said I had been laid off before, but this does not happen. Like I said, I go fully into anything that I'm doing with my entire soul. Like I am invested. And so I got fired from the job that was my dream job with the students and the families and the colleagues that I loved so dearly. And I don't even know how to describe the situation without saying that it knocked me on my butt. I was shocked. We never, ever, ever planned for this to happen. I couldn't even imagine this happening. It wasn't even a thought. So this circles back to our entire topic for tonight's episode. We really need to stress the importance of preparing for the unexpected. Even those things that you're like, that would never happen to me. Yeah, well, that thing that never would happen to me happened to me. And I'm able to look back at it now, and it kind of makes me smile because it was the best thing to ever happen to me. Because now this podcast was born, and now we're able to move forward and do different things. I mean, we're in a situation now where we've paid off our credit card debt. When I was pregnant, we were starting to put away money for like the pregnancy and making sure that we had enough money to cover all the hospital bills. And then I was going to be on maternity leave, but we didn't really know what my paycheck was going to look like. So we kept putting away cash. And when I lost my job, all of those things that we did in the beginning, paying off debt, taking Justin selling his car right before the baby's born, right after she's born, all of these things added up to this place that we were in that really kind of felt for the first time like we were in control of our finances and our money. And it wasn't, trust me, we have a long way to go. If you didn't catch it, we have $130,000 of student loan debt still. That's a lot. So we have a long ways to go. But because of this control that we had over our money, we knew where it was going, and we weren't paying thousands of dollars a month on credit card minimums. I lost my job. COVID-19 happened, and it kind of was just, okay, a little bump in the road.
I remember that both of us had the same feeling of it being more emotionally damaging than financially damaging. And the state of our bank account probably should have told us to feel differently. But because, again, we had finally taken control, we had shredded our credit cards, we had paid off those debts, student loans were the only thing that was in our way, or that still is in our way, from just attacking wealth and attacking being able to give and spend like we want. We were able to step back from the financial scare and focus on the emotional healing that needed to happen. And I still think it's happening, because the new school year is going to start and you won't be in the classroom. And that's so different for you, somebody who I believe is a natural teacher. And you'll go back to teaching someday, but we don't have to be worried about the money. We're worried about, hey, let's heal Haley's heart from this blow. Let's make sure that our family is okay emotionally before we start to tackle the other stuff. And we had finally been able to not feel that pressure, not feel that weight on our shoulders from the financial aspects.
But we're in a position now where I'm staying home in the fall. This has really jolted me. Like, I am a teacher through and through. I am meant to teach people. But I think that's why the podcast was born. I have zero desire right now to return to the classroom, because I'm still kind of dealing with, I was fired from my job that was literally everything that I wanted.
Yeah, and you still have students that like FaceTime you now. Like, we'll try and like get something done, and a student from last year FaceTimes like, hey, Mrs. Brownwoods, I'm just riding my bike and like I just want to see you. And it's like, what? Like, I haven't seen you since November, and then I got fired and didn't get to come back to you. But like, you're right, like, you're a teacher through and through, and those kids felt it, that community felt it. We have friends on Facebook that are parents of your students that were like, yo, you were amazing, and you were what my kid needed, even if it was just for a couple months. So I agree. You're a teacher through and through, and who knows what that teaching looks like. But this podcast, you're right, absolutely is born from the fact that teaching and seeing those successes for somebody else, whether they're a really cool little 9 or 10-year-old or our 28-year-old friend who's finally feeling better and in control with their wallet, those are the moments that are just awesome, and they feel so good. And that's why the Price of Avocado Toast got started. Do you want to talk a little bit more about like where the actual podcast comes from and like the course or anything like that?
Yeah, totally. I took a podcasting course with Keisha Fitzgerald and her fiance Sienna, and they created a company in January called She Goes Company. And within this company, they started a podcasting course. And she actually has a podcast called Empower Her Podcast, which I had listened to, but hadn't been super tuned into because I'm a teacher. I'm sitting here like overanalyzing every move of my students. I don't have time for that. But ever since Calliope was born, I'm home and I've had time to really dive into podcasts. And this podcast course just like kind of showed up. Like one night, I put this on Instagram the other day. One night, Justin and I had a little bit of wine and we're talking, and we had some friends be like, hey, you guys should really start a YouTube channel. And I'm like, that's a little weird. I don't know about a YouTube channel. But then we're drinking a little wine, and then we just come up with this idea about starting a podcast about money, because if you can't tell, we are so deeply passionate about this topic that we can't stop talking about it. And we figured a podcast would be the way to go. We could just kind of keep talking about it to people who actually want to listen and not just nagging our family. So I enrolled in this podcasting course, and it was phenomenal. It helped teach me literally the steps of creating a podcast. I mean, I'm sure I could have figured it out on my own, but it gave me so much support that I wouldn't have had else without it, and I'm so thankful for it.
Yeah, it's like a really good accountability group.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You know, even if you can figure it out on your own by watching YouTube or by talking to others, having a group of people go through the course with you holds you accountable. And they did, because we launched episode 1 like a day or two before you guys had your like celebration party. And episode 1 was great. And yeah, the podcast is born from these crazy steps of watching a live stage musical about Mahalia Jackson, to quitting law enforcement, to racking up student loan debt, to being fired from a school that you loved and cared about. And now it's, hey, I'm going to stay home in the fall and figure out what I'm going to do. And I'm going to push Price of Avocado Toast and see what happens. And so here's the podcast, and it's fun.
I'm so happy that we did this. We're using this platform to really hold ourselves accountable more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
Because of this podcast, because of the Instagram following that we have, and all of the people who are listening, we have made some deep sacrifices this week. This week has been big for us. We canceled our pet insurance. We canceled our cable. We switched our phone bill. We are about to sell our car. We have all these things that we're going to do. And we wouldn't have done that if it were just Justin and I tossing ideas back and forth, making excuses back and forth. But we have this outlet and this platform and this following. And because of all of that, it's our accountability over everything else.
I agree. It's been so great having all of these people support us. You know, we dropped episode 1, and our financial coach, Ryan, he called us and we had our Zoom meeting, and he was like, hey, let's just take a look at the budget after he had heard episode 1. And we're going through the budget, and he's super upfront, doing the whole, hey, let's find what you like to spend money on. Let's find what we can cut. And starts talking to us about trimming some things up. And the very next day we go and drop our internet and phone bill and cable $150, because again, the value added to our life in those things just doesn't make sense right now. With our beautiful baby and the things that we like doing, we can save money there. And so we did. And it was so cool because we met Ryan just a few short weeks ago through Instagram for Price of Avocado Toast, which again only happened because you got fired and decided to join a podcast course. Like, I think that's so dope.
I mean, everything happens for a reason. This podcast wouldn't have happened had I already had a job lined up for next year. It wouldn't have happened if I didn't take the podcasting course. I'm just super thankful for all of that. I mean, life knocks you on your butt sometimes, but I promise you it all happens for a reason, and you will get through it. And I'm sitting here smiling as we're recording this because getting fired, ruined me, but it was the best thing to ever happen to me. I think it was the push that I needed to leave the actual classroom, which sounds really sad because we need passionate teachers, but I feel like this is where I need to be, and this podcast is where I need to be, and Justin and I made a choice. We made the decision a couple months ago that I was going to stay home with our baby in the fall. Now, that is not a decision that we would have even considered had I not been fired. Had we not made money moves and paid off certain things and been in a financial situation where we had money in the bank to cover the first couple months. But now I'm so excited to be able to even have that as an option. Like, where we live, I don't know many stay-at-home parents off of one income. And I feel so blessed to have that even be an option.
It's absolutely a blessing. You're right. We made that choice. We decided that this is what was going to be best for our family because of daycare costs and all of the other intangibles that go in, and we're going to make it work. And we're making the right moves and taking the right steps now so that our family is still thriving in the fall. And it's been a wild few years. But now people know. Now people know the money mistakes that we've made. People know how we've gotten here to this podcast. And they know the exact number, approximate number of our debt. $130,000 student loan debt. We're not counting the mortgage debt because we're cool having the house and making payments towards it. But putting that number out there holds us accountable. And now that people know our story, I think it's exciting to really get into the meat and potatoes of what the price of avocado toast can be.
We are now changing our goals. We are not just thinking, maybe by the end of 2020 we will pay off and be under $130,000. That was our goal for this year. But selling the car, we're going to sell the 4Runner. We will be below that. And I get fired up even just thinking about it, because it was 4 years in the future, and now it seems like, okay, I can see the end. And I know so many of you that are listening that are like, man, I am drowning in student loans, in just all sorts of whatever debt you have. But if you do the right things and you set yourself up, you will be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel. That's where we're at right now, and it feels invigorating to just have that control over your finances. We do not have financial freedom yet, but we are well on our way, and it is the coolest feeling ever. I'm so hyped up about paying off debt. I mean, trust me, I'm so sad about parting ways with my dream car. I love that 4Runner so deeply. Mm-hmm. We went to go look at a new car today, and it made me so sad. Just I'm not ready to pay that off, but I want to be debt-free more than I want that car, and that's where we're at. And so now that you know about us, and you know about our debt and our story, now we can finally dive into the do's and the don'ts and the highs and the lows for money for millennials. So you will be hearing more about that in future episodes, and we really, really, really appreciate all of the support.
Yeah, we got so many great questions from people about ideas and topics that they want to hear more about, and those align so much with what we were hoping for Price of Avocado Toast. So it's going to be fun now that people know where we're at with things and they know exactly who we are and where we stand. We can get into those millennial finance questions. We can get into those interviews that we had planned and just really start to have a lot of fun with this thing. So that's going to be a wrap on this episode of the Price of Avocado Toast. It's been a pleasure to have this conversation with you guys. Again, thank you so much for joining us, and happy budgeting.
You've got this, Toasties.
If you're interested in speaking more with a financial coach, hit up our coach Ryan at MeFinanciallyFree on Instagram. Use the promo code HELP50 in the consultation notes section to receive 50% off.
Thank you for listening to the Price of Avocado Toast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you vibed with this episode, we would love it if you shared it on your social media and tagged us so we can say thanks.